Okay, there's a few things I want to touch on today. Why we worm egg count, and I've said this in the last couple of groups, but for those of you that are already doing it, apologise, but if people aren't, it's a great take-home message if we can get some people starting to do it. And as an industry, we still don't do enough egg counting. There's still a huge percentage of people that just have set times of drenching, or they wait to see scouring or death before they pull the trigger. Using WormBoss, just a little bit of a quick look at WormBoss and why that might be useful for you, and the decision to drench tool that's actually on WormBoss, and probably a bit more of a discussion about the seasonal variation that we see in worm egg count levels. It's fairly specific to, the data is from our lab in Hamilton, but in saying that, Victoria is all a winter rainfall area, and most of it's, the percentages in terms of what animals need drenching might change the further north you go, but the high risk times are still going to be June, July, August. So that's a gut that's had significant worm damage. That's a ewe that's been post-mortem, dying with worms. What Rob was showing us, that first part of the intestine, first couple foot, how purple it is. There shouldn't be any of that purple discoloration. We shouldn't have those blood vessels, the engorgement of the blood vessels. A more normal colour would be similar to this. So, I look at that and I think it's pretty angry, and you think about how long this sheep's been losing weight for before it's actually died, and it's a pretty, even animal welfare implications, let alone the dollars that have been wasted on farm across all those sheep. I reckon even you guys should be able to tell that is a worm damage, and it's not that hard to do. Flip your sheep up on the right hand side, cut into it, and this, that pretty well just sits there like that. It's a pretty easy diagnosis. So why do we worm egg count? It's to stop, obviously, the deaths. If we don't egg count, what are our options for working out when we need to drench? It's either locked in the calendar, certain timelines, or we wait for scouring, we wait for pushing a mob of ewes and wait for 4 or 5 to really struggle and fall out the back, or it's the deaths. If any of those 3 reasons are the reason you're drenching, you've already cost yourself a hell of a lot of money. It's obviously your mortality rate, but another big difference is going to be if they're pregnant ewes is the body weight of the lambs. Last year I had Lifetime Ewe Group where we did some lamb post-mortems in, and the two brothers next door to each other, same genetics, same lambing time, obviously the same seasonal conditions, and we went out. This was in up around Wagga. It was the week there was a heap of snow in central New South Wales, up around Orange and Bathurst, and so it was a cold week. We went to one bloke's farm first, and I rang the night before and said, "Can you go around and find some dead lambs?" We went to one guy's farm. He had a box trailer full of lambs, and I think he only runs about 900 ewes. Went to his brother's place. He had 5 dead lambs. Put them on the scales. They were 3 and 3.5 kilos, all these dead lambs. The 3 from the other paddock were 4.5 and 5 kilos. I really couldn't explain it. I thought, something's gone wrong. How have we not sort of got to the bottom of this? Quizzing. The only difference was these ewes pre-lambing, he diagnosed an egg count of 1,100 eggs per gram in them, whereas the other guy had done an egg count 3 weeks earlier. I think it was 200. He drenched them pre-lambing and put them out in the paddock. So it's a pretty, we go to all the efforts of getting the nutrition right, and we're changing our genetics to improve lamb survival and these types of things. Worms have been around for a long time, and a lot of us still not getting it right. But that's a pretty good case where an egg count 4 or 5 weeks earlier, he would have diagnosed that he had a worm problem, and the feed he was giving those ewes would have actually been absorbed. So we've got to get on board and drench these sheep before we have the weight loss. And most of us have been through a big period of feeding sheep. I would say pretty typically when we wait for deaths to occur, we've had a 4 or 5 kilo weight loss across the mob, loss in production, which, putting that in terms of grain, which you've all shoveled out a fair bit recently, if it's a 5-to-1 feed conversion efficiency, that's 20 kilos of grain less that those sheep could have got away with. which at $2.50, 25 cents a kilogram, that's $5 a head. It's a whopping cost. This is the WormBus website. So that's just a screenshot of it. Here we've got the different states, and sort of some of them are broken up into regions as well. But if you click on this Victoria winter rainfall, you get a program summary, and it talks a little bit about different options for your management. And it's really good because it comes in you can read this as a school child, you can read it from an advisor, and there's all different levels, and you can get into it as deep as you want. But it's a really good start to actually understanding a little bit more about worms and their role within sheep. And then there's this drench decision guide up here, which I'm just going to take you through quickly. So you get on that. Are these sheep showing signs suggesting of a worm infection? So this is an example I've just worked through now in a winter situation. So we ask ourselves, are they scouring? No, they're not. Are they anemic, or have they got lethargy? No, they don't. So there's no signs of a worm infection. And then what are the sheep? So are they lambs just about to be marked? No, they're actually weaners, and it's in between the autumn break through to September. So it's pretty simple. Click on that, and it gives you some recommended actions. It tells us that we should worm test 4 to 6 weeks after the autumn break. So if we think about that now, the autumn break was 8 or 9 weeks ago, and think about it yourselves. Have you actually gone and done some egg counts in your weaner sheep yet? If you haven't, we are a month late, but let's get on board. Let's do it right now and see whether eggs are causing production loss. And it does have some more fine print there. It says in a high risk situation, we might get in 2 weeks after the autumn break. And that's going to be your higher rainfall areas or your really high stocking rates. So south of Hamilton, we'd be saying probably come in 4 or 5 weeks after the autumn break. People central Victoria, we're sort of talking 8 weeks after the break is probably the time that we'd like to get on board and do some egg counts. And then it also talks a little bit about the continuing of egg counts after we do that one. So we come in, they're saying 4 to 6 weeks, and again, if we're high rainfall areas, we might be 2 or 3 weeks. Every 2 or 3 weeks, we're egg counting weaners in winter, and in summer it might be every 6 to 8 weeks. So I'll talk a little bit more about the frequency depending on the season. And then there's another example there, which I've gone through doing ewes pre-lambing. So spring lambing ewes that are showing no signs of a worm burden. So if the ewes are in poor condition, the recommendation is let's not worry about doing an egg count in these. Let's just give them a pre-lambing drench because they're highly susceptible to worms, and if we can give them a bit of a kickstart being in poor condition pre-lambing, it's going to be beneficial. If they're in condition score 2.7 or better, then let's do a worm egg count. If it's above 100 eggs per gram, we'll probably get in and drench. If it's under 100 and we know the feed levels are going to stay good throughout lambing, then we shouldn't need to drench those sheep. And it's a guide. There's times where we would actually recommend more than just a short-acting drench. If these come in at 600 eggs per gram, feed on off is short, even if they're in good condition, twin lambing ewes, we might say, well, let's get in and do a capsule. So it's a guide, it's a useful guide to have a look at, and gives you some things, but it's not, don't take everything for the absolute truth. And then there's also got some more management tools that you can look at. So the drench decision guides I've just shown you, but there's some things about grazing management, talking about quarantine drenches, how to effectively use longer acting products. There's a whole host of things there, and there's some really good information that is free and available to you. We need to be really on the ball with egg counting. And I think it's something that as an industry we can really vastly improve. So my advice is monthly egg counts in mature sheep while there's green feed, and we can go to every second month during those dry periods. And some of you have got 500 sheep, some of you have got 5,000, and lambing time you might be trying to get mob sizes down to 100 or 200 ewes, and for some of you that's 50, 60 mobs of sheep. The gold standard is to do them all, but you don't have to do them all. Let's target a few. let's get some representative mobs, let's do some maidens, let's do some singles and twins, let's do some triplets if we're going to that extent. And let's see a snapshot of them. Let's do 5 or 6 mogs to get a snapshot. If they're all high, then okay, everything's probably going to need a drench. If they're all low, then you're pretty safe that not everything's going to need a drench. If you get a smattering of results, then perhaps you go and do some more egg counting. If you get a trend that all the twins are pretty high, the singles aren't, well, let's do all the twins. If our maidens are high and everything else is low, let's get in and do the maidens. And yeah, so it doesn't have to be an expensive operation if you've got all these mobs of sheep, and it's not an excuse to not do it. Over the last couple of weeks, I think we've had 2 clients ring up with sheep losses. Both have been worms. On both occasions, the conversation has been, okay, so what's the drench history of these sheep? They haven't been drenched. What's the when were they last egg counted? Yeah, not this year. Those people have called because their sheep are dying, because the management of those sheep for the last 6 or 7 months has been horrendous. Absolutely no monitoring and no drench. And I don't mind if you go in and do a drench at times without an egg count, that's fine. But not drenching and not egg counting is just foolish. So what am I trying to say? If we're getting crashes happening on a regular basis in the middle of winter, we've really got to look at our summer drench program. And, you know, I just said before, we've had 2 wonderful summers from a worm point of view. So imagine how bad that might have been if we had an early autumn break and they've been contaminating their pastures for 2 or 3 months already. For seeing the trouble mobs and I guess focusing our attention on those sheep, I've said it already, but let's monitor the light stock the most. Let's make sure they're the ones we're monitoring most frequently, and the ones that have been on contaminated pastures. So if our weaners have been on a paddock for the last 2 or 3 months and now we're going to lamb ewes down on that or those paddocks, they're the ones that we should be putting the extra attention on monitoring too. And the timing of work's important. So for lambs, 4 or 5 weeks after the autumn break, okay, that's come and gone. If you haven't done it, let's get on board. Our mature sheep, you know, they're only a couple of weeks overdue. So again, let's get in and get some egg counts on those. This is the Worm Boss website again, and just there's the monthly newsletter that gets published that myself and someone else write a quick update on what we're seeing in Victoria. We generally whack up a graph of what's actually happening or put in something with a little bit of data and I guess what we're seeing. It's very easy. Just hit your subscribe button. It's a free service. You get a monthly update with what's happening, which is a really good reminder for you to actually think about, well, what are my sheep likely to be doing? It's not as good as doing your own egg counts, but it's better than not doing anything at all. So I guess take-home messages, have a look at Worm Boss and subscribe to it. Again, there's some good information on there. If you're not egg counting at all, then let's start. Let's do some mobs and get into it, because there's nothing worse than going around and just willy-nilly drenching sheep, or, as I've said, the production loss. It's not worth waiting for the production loss to occur before we get on board with an egg count. And let's maximise the benefits from worm egg counts. So let's get our timing of them right after the autumn break. There's absolutely no point checking mature sheep 4 weeks after the autumn break. You're completely wasting your time. Get the timing right 6 or 7 weeks after the break, and you'll actually. The reason we do that is it rains today, the worm life cycle can start to continue because we've got moisture. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks for those worms to actually become edible for the animal, to be larvae that they can pick up. And then it takes another 3 weeks for those larvae to start coming out. So it takes 6 weeks, really, in those older sheep before we can get an indication of what has been the post-rain larval pickup. And, you know, there's a cost of doing the egg count, but it's more your time. You know, it does take time. You've got 10 mobs to go on egg count. It's a few hours work to shoot around your paddocks and do it. So let's make sure that you're utilising your time as best as you can. And test the most susceptible mobs first. So again, let's target the weaners. Let's not blanket go and do everything. Let's do our mobs that we expect to rise first. So weaners, wethers. So merino wethers, generally we've got them stacked on, so they're going to have higher density and they're going to pick up worms quicker, and they're typically in poorer condition than anything else as well. And then our maiden ewes should be our next mob. And then let's get the frequency of testing right. So let's not go, okay, every 6 weeks I'm going to do egg counts. Let's go, okay, it's monthly when there's green grass, and now we can reduce the frequency now that we're in summer and it's dry time. And understanding when that worm challenge will be. So it will be June, July, and let's manage our sheep accordingly. And I guess, again, just a plug for the subscribing to the Worm Boss regional update. So in winter, I'd be going 4 or 5 weeks for weaners and probably 6 to 7 for adult sheep. And that's a Hamilton advice. You could whack on 2 weeks on both ends of that if you were central Victoria or lower rainfall comfortably. And that's winter advice too. So summer, then you could add on more again. So it does change as the season progresses, I guess. We'll touch on capsules then. Because a few people have asked about that, and I guess I think what the take-home message, or what I would like it to be, is that we can't be prescriptive about capsules. There's years where capsules are wonderful, wet years where we've got high worm burdens. Then, I'm a big advocate for potentially using capsules in those years. I think years like this where we've got really low worm pressure, and if you've locked up pastures and you've got plenty of feed to lamb down on, it's really hard to see there being value for money in using capsules, let alone the drench resistance implications for using them. And if you are going to use them, let's use them on our high-risk mobs. So it's our maiden ewes and our twin-bearing ewes that should be the first ones to get a capsule. Our older single-bearing ewes, I guess it's a great thing. With most of us having a sheep flock that's 100% ewes at this time of year, if we're capsuling everything, then there's not a sheep on the place that hasn't had a capsule, which really sets us up for worm resistance. I guess, the merino flock where we might have a couple thousand wethers running around, well, they're actually your group of sheep which can continue to carry worms that aren't getting exposed to a capsule. So it's just something we need to think about. So the mobs that we shouldn't be or really trying to avoid capsuling, if it's something that's part of your program, is our mature single-bearing ewes. We should be able to get away with them with them not needing a capsule in most years. And you won't get the benefits in live weight response from the lambs in those single-bearing ewes nearly as much as you will out of a twin-bearing ewe. And come in 50 and 80 days after you've capsuled them and do an egg count and see if the capsules are still working. Because if we're starting to get some egg counts, we need to come in with what we call a tail cutting drench and wipe all those worms out to actually reduce the selection pressure. And our capsules that most of us use, Bionic and Dynamax, have abamectin and a white drench in them. And abamectin is such an important drench. It's in our triple combinations, it's in StarTech, it's in NapFix. The only drench it's not in is Zolvix and our white and clear drench. So if we go and use these capsules and wreck our mectin drench, well, you're looking at $1 a drench with Zolvix for a long time. Or back to your whites and clears, which on a lot of places are shot already. So it's that drench resistance thing is what we're really trying to, prevent the development of. But absolutely acknowledge that you can get some great weight gain responses in times when you're lambing on not much feed and sheep that are in poor condition. Well, Zolvix is the bad one, 115-day ASI. Well, yeah, it rules out for a lot of people, yeah. Yep. I guess you've got to be aware of what the others are, but virtually all the other ones are 14 to 28 days, which we should be able to time that right and not have to drench them again. But I guess it's be aware of your options. So Cydectin, amazingly, it lasts longer than Ivomec, yet it's got a 7-day withhold, and I think Ivomec might be 28. So Cydectin's a really good option if you've got lambs that are wormy today and you want to take a draft out of them in 3 weeks' time. And your whites and clear combination is generally, depending on the product, but it's generally 14 days. So you can mix the two of those together and you've got it's essentially a triple combination 14-day withhold. So that's a great alternative for someone that wants to be drenching frequently and taking lambs out.